Hi folks, Six Slices here. J.O. Ventures Outdoors recently did an open tag looking for lockback knives. Now, I have a few lockback knives, and all the knives currently in the view here are lockback knives. They are, I don't know if they're all my lockback knives. Honestly, I couldn't really say, but they were all the ones that I could put my hand on literally as I'm sitting here at my desk. So I'll run through them very quickly, but I'll try and do them as quickly as possible, because if we spent a lot of time on each one, we would be here forever. Now, of course, you could almost say the daddy of the backlock. I don't know if it really, if Buck actually invented the backlock, but the 110 certainly popularised it. And when I was a young lad, the only locking knives you saw, well, there was the occasional liner lock, but you didn't tend to see them very often. But the lock knives you saw were all clones of the 110, usually smaller, usually not very well made, usually with loose wobbly blades, and yeah, but anyway, that's that. The other one that has perhaps been around a long time, so certainly, predates the 110, but whether, again, this influenced the 110 or whether Buck came up with something separate, because it's a backlock, but it's a different style of backlock. But that's the Makita, the Black Cat knife, the K55K, whatever you want to call it. But that's what that is. They still make those, and they've been making those knives for a long time, but they make all sorts of different ones now. So under the Otter brand, so it's the same knife made from the same people, but these ones are called Otter. This is the brass one. Now, where will we go next? Let's have a look at, here we are, we've got one on top. We'll go to Italy. Now, this is a Mazarin lock. Oops, in completely the wrong place. This is the Mazarin lockback in stag, which is very nice and relatively inexpensive for a stag lock knife. Also from Mazarin, can never remember what this one's called, but it's got some nice burlwood. The only problem is the burlwood on one side is lovely, and the burlwood on the other side is lovely, but they're not even remotely a match. I think I probably prefer this side, which is the pile side. It also has some really good pseudo file work. I think it's just CNC machined rather than done by an artisan by hand. But anyway, that's nice. As I said, it's another Mazarin. Where are we then? Well, here's a German one, Solingen made, little baby tiny lockback. I like little knives, and this one is no exception. Again, this is in stag. This one is insanely expensive for what it is. It's twice the price of that Mazarin, but it's half the size. But it's made by Boca in Solingen and not by Mazarin in Maniago. Okay. Oh, there's another Italian. Missed this one out. This is actually a really good knife to carry. So I'll just pop it down there and I won't drop it. It's the Viper Turn. Really, just a really good knife. It's got ball bearings, so it's relatively light in the action, but it's a lockback, and it's got ram's horn covers, which is always a thing I like to see. What next? I think I'm all in, because there's plenty more. Let's do some Rough Riders, because there's a Rough Rider in the middle. This one here, it's sort of, it's a powder horn sort of designed knife, but I don't think it's really what you would call a toothpick. I bought it because it's sort of like a toothpick, but it's got some Spanish sort of influence to it as well. And I think it's actually called it's not called the French Tickler or something ridiculous and suggestive. But anyway, that's a Rough Rider. little baby tiny Rough Rider, the Rough Rider Cub. This is a cool little knife. They're really small. Of course, any lockback in Britain is officially a weapon of mass destruction, so you can't carry them. But this would be a great little knife to carry, and it's so tiny it couldn't really offend anybody except the lawyers in Britain, which it will. Where were we? Rough Rider. Oh yes, there's another Rough Rider. This is basically a sodbuster, but it's a lockback, and very, very nice. And again, this is a Rough Rider, so the cost is, or the price is, remarkably small for what they are. I think they're probably 20 quid plus or minus a little bit, but not something like that. Now, have we any more roughies? No, we're not roughies. We're going to go. Oh, here we are. Here's another because it's a kind of budget knife. This is the one of the Boca Magnum range, which is their cheapest range, and I think they are all 440A steel. But it's got wooden scales, and it's got these, I think they're cast rather than being machined in any way, bolsters. And it's just a nice little knife. And it's backlock, which I always like. And it was a present from my son-in-law. And yeah, it's just it's a good little knife. There was a time once when if you saw a knife advertised as having 440 steel, it was a positive selling feature, just like they might say today it's got Magna Cut, or it's got S45VN or S90V. When you saw 440, you thought, oh, I've got to have one of those. And if that, I'll give you an example of that. There's another one here. Oops. Pick this up. This is my little silver tern. Now this silver tern was my pocket knife, my one and only pocket knife that I carried all the time for years and years and years, and it has written on it 440 stainless, Japan. So it's a Japanese made lockback knife, and I bought it because it said 440 steel. Now it doesn't say whether it's 440A, B or C. I think one probably assumes it was 440A. Certainly 30 years ago that was a, pardon the pun, cutting edge steel. But if we're sticking with, we'll go through some other Japanese ones. Most of the rest of them are, not all, but most of the rest of them are made in Japan. This again, now I don't really know anything about this knife, but certain thing grabs my attention. Now, when Sal Glesser started making knives with a hole in the back for the thumb opening, he used one of the big brothers of the silver tern, and he basically welded a bolt onto the back of the blade and then ground it so that it was the same width as the blade, and shaped it so that it made a round hole, round piece around the back, as opposed to a bolt-shaped protuberance. And his knives looked remarkably like this, and he had them made by a company called G Sakurai in Japan, in Seki City. And G Sakurai were not afraid of a little bit of plagiarism. Certainly they had a part in their contract with Mar that said that they could make knives in his name and sell them. And I don't know about this knife, but I suspect that this knife here was based on a larger version of the silver tern. And if you look at it, you can see how it's been sort of altered around the back here, and it had these cutouts in, and I wonder if those cutouts were to hide the fact that the original had holes in it. I don't know that, but there we are. That's another Japanese lockback, and I bought that because it's interesting. I don't know that it's valuable or anything, but it kind of sort of shows the missing link, as it were. Right, so if we're in Japan, let's look at some more Japanese knives. Actually, I'll look at one Chinese one first, and then The rest are all Japanese. I think this is made in China. This is the QSP Worker, designed by Arthur Brem. It is a really, really good knife. It's called the Worker, which effectively is the translation of Sebenza, and it is just a good working knife. This one is in Desert Ironwood. I bought another one in G10 for my son-in-law because I knew it was such a good knife to use, and he being a mariner would use a knife like that. So now I think all the rest are, oh no, there's one more. This is one my son gave me. This is a Chinese one, and it kind of restarted my interest in pocket knives. He found this at work and brought it home and gave it to me, and it was in a right state. So I cleaned it up, sharpened it, reground the point on it, and so forth. So, but it's a Chinese generic backlock. The only writing on it at all is stainless. But it kind of got me back to collecting. I've been collecting since I was about 7 or 8, but I'd kind of slowed down, got other interests, but this kind of speeded my interest in knives back up. So let's have a quick look at some Japanese. You see, here we are, we're going again. This one's actually American, but it's interesting because this is a Gerber, and Paul Gerber, whose chief knife designer at the time was Mar, incidentally, but Paul Gerber made these knives in America. They were injection molded one-piece handles with pinned-in blades and back springs. Very simple design, but he then took that over to G Sakurai to have them made, and Paul Gerber, as I say, then left and formed his own company. So he went to G Sakurai and started having knives made there. And there is a clear history to be seen between these one-piece molded knives and knives like the Ladybug, which was one of the first designs from Almar's friend Sal Glesser. So anyway, we're on to the Japanese ones, and we'll run through those because I've got more Japanese lockbacks than any other nationality. So Ladybug, I had this one. I bought it for my wife actually many years ago. This is my latest one. This was a Knife Centre exclusive with packerwood handles and a Sanmai blade. This was also a factory special order. Can't remember which dealer it came from. Might have been the Knife Centre, or somebody. Can't remember. And this one here, which is probably my favourite of the Ladybugs, is in K390. Now all of these are made in Japan, I think by Moki nowadays, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Originally I think G Sakurai probably made them. We can step up a little bit in the size ranks with the Dragonfly, which I really like, but I have 2 Dragonflies. The other Dragonfly is the Dragonfly Tattoo, which has this lovely dragonfly, surprise, and grasses and so forth on it. This is stainless steel, and I think the steel blade steel is something like B1N or something. Nothing particularly exotic, but anyway, it's a good looking knife. So I'll just get some of these out of the way because there's too many of them. Another one that another 2. Yeah, let's do these in order. Sorry, my hands are still, well, they always will be. They're always going to be rubbish. So this one here, this is a tiny little knife. Comes in a little leather slip, and it's got Almar's chop on it. A chop is a square symbol that was used both in ancient China and Japan as your sort of signature. You put that on sort of like a seal. It's probably its Western equivalent. But anyway, so this is an Almar knife, and he always has his chop on all of the blades. And this is a tiny little lockback in mother of pearl, black mother of pearl, and stainless steel, which is a very clear link to some of the Japanese made knives that were perhaps influenced, let's just call it influenced, the plagiarism, it doesn't sound so good, but influenced by, or influenced these knives, which are from current Moki knives, which this one is, I think it's stag bone as opposed to stag, but I'm not 100% certain. It's called the Kronos anyway. It's really a nice knife. This is called the Pliant, and it's in another burl wood, Thuya burl I think it is, stainless steel bolsters, polished steel blades. So I like those, they're really nice. Now the other one that kind of has some link back to the sort of ladybugs and so forth, another injection molded knife with a back lock. This one has a screw in it as opposed, or a bolt in it, rather than just being pinned, but that's probably because this one is relatively modern. But this one is Fallkniven. Fallkniven knives are famously Swedish, but all their knives are made in Japan, and I believe they're made by Moki nowadays. They're certainly made in Seki City if they're not made by Moki. So that's one, and this is the last one I'm going to show you today. This is probably my favourite of the lot, and it is the Fallkniven TK3, which, you know, if I could carry a lockback knife legally in the UK, this would probably be the one I would choose to carry all the time. Desert ironwood, stainless steel bolsters, back lock, 3G steel blade, Sanmai blade. These are both Sanmai blades actually. So that would be my favourite. Anyway, these are all lockback knives, and I have, as you can see, quite a few. I don't know if this is all of them. I suspect there's probably one or two kicking around in other places, because it's a style of knife that I particularly like. Although I have to say, since my latest injury, I am finding backlocks harder to use. Well, I'm finding all locks harder to use, but backlocks perhaps particularly so. Anyway, that'll do. High-end knife series, there's another one coming up in the next day or so, and if you've not seen it already, I put up a video today of two new Tailor's Eyewitness patterns, which are brand new. They're based on a knife that was in a catalogue in the 20s or 30s or sometime around then, but they've been designed by Keith Moorby. They're on my website, on my YouTube channel today. That's the first time they've been seen in public, and they were sent to me by Tailor's Eyewitness to review. Unfortunately, these are pre-production samples I have to send back, but I will have one eventually because they've promised me one. I hope that doesn't change my review particularly, but to be honest, it wouldn't, because the excitement around a new pattern for a company that's not released a new pattern in my memory anyway is a great thing to see. So anyway, I'll sign off there. If you like the stuff, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of it, then please subscribe and remember to ring the notifications bell. Thank you very much. Bye.